Oh, they've done it! Steven Gerrard, an instant hero! Can you believe it? Plenty attacking! No! The comeback is complete! A stunning second half from Schalke!
Blau und weiß sein Leben lang. Herzlich willkommen zurück auf SchalkeMerica. Welcome to SchalkeMerica episode 166 or whatever we're on. I'm your host, Richard Carmen. Joining me as always, co-host Jack Mangan. How we doing? Yeah, long overdue. Nice to have Victory Monday, get that out of the way somewhat early in the season a little bit. Hey, if you're in the chat, let us know. Can you hear the audio? We're messing some things tonight, trying something different. So let us know if you can hear us or not. But yeah, Victory Monday, happy to celebrate it. A mini Revierderby, Jack, against Bochum. A preview into the actual Revierderby against Dortmund coming up this weekend. Good result, 3-1 victory. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like people can't hear you, unfortunately, which is beautiful because you're saying those beautiful words right now. Yeah, that's unfortunate because your voice sounds better than mine. We're gonna have to pivot. Hang tight. We'll, we're gonna do it live, switcheroo. We're gonna be right back. Hang tight. I swear, we'll be here. We'll be back. All right, Jack, let's go to StreamYard. All right, well, bear with me while I do that. All right, I'm back. I'm waiting for Jack to jump into the chat, and there he is.
Good evening, all. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes, Pascal. Hopefully you can hear us. Back. Hopefully the sound is better. But yeah, it's nothing like live telecast, right?
Yeah, we tried this during the live stream 2 weeks ago, and a similar result took place. Where do you want to start from at this point? I mean, we're already live right now, but
we're already live. You know, let's get to the Bochum match. We won 3-1. Sure. Pascal says all good now. Here we go. So yeah, let me get my slides ready. We're all ready. This is live TV. Here we go. Here's a lineup. There's a lineup for us. Yeah, interesting lineup. It hasn't really changed from last week though, right? Not too much. A little bit. Schwoloff in goal, obviously. Back four, Matriciani on the right. That's because Brunner had a muscular injury. Vandenberg back in the lineup. Yoshida more back on the left. Middle pivot, holding pivot midfielders, whatever you want to call them. Kraus and Flick. Front three of attackers with Larson, Drexler, Bulter, with Toyota up top. Where do you want to start with this lineup?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Brunner had very much been a mainstay in the squad. Really had that right back position kind of on lock. Unfortunate that he couldn't go, but get a look at Matriciani for the first time. Which, as we said, like it's always interesting to get a look at some of these guys for the first time in a new season, see how they see how they do. I don't think any of us have been particularly disappointed with the performances of Moore so far when we've seen him come in the game. Obviously, like Oyean would be, the first choice there, but he's performed very well and has a legitimate claim to that position, or at least into the starting lineup to some extent. Love seeing Flick get another run out in central midfield. I kind of like that Flick Kraus pairing personally, kind of digging it at the moment. And then, Drexler has likewise gained a little bit of a foothold, as has Larson. We would expect more often than not, Tirada and Bolter are going to be probably close to two of the first names on the team sheet, if not the first, names on the team sheet. So a couple things, rotating in and out because of injuries and availability. But 4-2-3-1. Sometimes, Kraus would push up a little further and Bolter would kind of go wide and Drexler would push up and almost kind of become like a 4-3-1-2 to some extent. So kind of different shapes at different phases of the game. But interesting starting lineup overall. Are you a little bit surprised to see Larson still kind of getting that run at this point? What have you? I just want to talk about him real briefly off the top, not to single him out, but I guess I kind of am. What has your initial impression been of young Larson?
Underwhelming. I did want to see him again because I want to see maybe he has rust and he should be able to shake it off or anything. He has glimpses of something spectacular, but for the most part, has been underwhelming. Hasn't done much, and at this point, I want someone who's going to bring that attacking prowess and maybe bring back Salazar. Now Salazar's been doing well off the bench. Well, he did the first game or last game before this last one against Bochum. Not as active, I guess, and also because he's probably playing on the wing. Pascal makes a comment here. So question the coach's decision on not including Aiden. Moore was nice, and Larson should play striker. That's interesting. Also, Rodrigo needs to play attacking midfield, not left wing. Yeah, he needs to be in that 10 role. And it's hard, though, too, right? Because the Drexler, and we'll get to Drexler, but for me, Larson, still underwhelming. Pace is good, but who do you bring at this point? I mean, obviously, Salazar is the main guy you're thinking of, right? Unless you want to go two big men up top, which we'll get to in a second. But Larson, for me, How about you?
Yeah, I think he's had interesting moments. I think, unfortunately, his first touch has been less predictable than Weston McKennie's at times when McKennie was here. He's either going to control it brilliantly or it's going to be just completely errant and ruin the momentum of whatever move is happening. I think Larson gives the ball away far too frequently as well. Did have a nice through ball play to Tirada, which I expected Tirada to do much better with at one point. Set him on for kind of a one-on-one with the keeper, and Tirada just kind of took way too much time on it and kind of missed his own chance. So not to say it was entirely a poor performance from Larson or anything like that. He was a player with a lot of expectation, I think, when we initially signed him. And I think so far, especially now that he's gotten a couple starts and we've seen like decent minutes from him to be able to judge, leaving a little bit to be desired, I think, compared to what we were maybe hoping of getting. Pascal mentions that Larson should play striker. I've talked repeatedly about how at various times in his career in the past, he's played a little more centrally, whether it's attacking midfield or up front. I don't think that's necessarily a bad shout. I think it doesn't seem to be the way that Kramer's intending on using him at all, especially with some of the bigger bodies we have, Tirada, Polter, that kind of a thing. A very different profile than what we're currently seeing play in that forward line. But that's enough. I think it's enough conversation about Larson specifically before we even get into the rest of the game. But thank you for indulging that.
Yeah. And, I mentioned Drexler. Well, obviously, we are fans of Aiden, right? And we do want to see more of Salazar, but where would he play? And I say this because, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Drexler's played very well in his two stints and the 10 position this season. And so to take him out, obviously he's a workhorse. He's going to keep working no matter what and does dirty stuff, but he's done pretty well at the 10 spot so far through two games. And he's obviously scored a goal against Bochum. So if you bring Salazar in, you're going to put him in an unnatural position at the right wing or something like that. And I don't know how well that's going to work. And naturally, you want to think you put Salazar in the middle and Drexler out to the right, and that could work. Drexler is obviously serviceable there. But, thoughts on Drexler, because I think he's performed well. He's obviously made team of the week, according to Kicker, which we'll get to. But thoughts on Rodrigo Salazar and Drexler in that 10 position?
Yeah, Drexler was often deployed in wider areas last season, which is why when we initially saw the lineup of Larson and Drexler prior to last week, I was saying pre-match, hey, I wonder if this is actually we're going to see Larson more centrally than we had been, and we're going to see Drexler back kind of where we would expect him to potentially be. The fact that those two, that Drexler's been playing in sort of that advanced midfield role has been a little bit surprising. I do think he's done, obviously pretty well overall. I mean, Salazar has to be somebody that you would expect would be in the starting lineup. I don't personally have an issue with giving him a little bit more rest because, as we talked about, we wore him down a lot last season with how many minutes he played, and he's also somebody that when he does start, does seem to tire, by the 60th minute mark or anything. So I think a super sub role from him is not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, you would definitely like his influence and presence, I think, on the pitch for longer than, just like a second half cameo overall. And certainly I think that his contributions, you would imagine would have been significantly more impactful than what Larson has been able to provide from a starting position so far.
100% agree. And that also begs another question, because if you don't put Salazar, well, let's talk about the big men later. Let's finish up the lineup. Bolter, obviously, Terodde, hoping to see Terodde maybe get another goal in this one. I think the one thing we can agree on with the starting lineup, out of any of the players, the player that seems the most at home in the Bundesliga is Bolter. Every game, he's been the most consistent, best player almost every game. And again, he did well in this game.
He did. Bolter actually, I think, with the furthest progressive passing distance in this game of anybody who wasn't part of the back line, because obviously you would expect center backs and fullbacks to probably have more progressive passing distance just because of the position they have on the pitch. Bolter, ostensibly being kind of like a striker winger who operates kind of in those gaps. The fact that he had a lot of that, I think, speaks to his work rate and how much he does contributes in a lot of different areas. I mean, he really is surprisingly effective and almost deceptively technical on some of those shoulder moments where he can do the fake shot, pull it back, turn kind of thing. He does that consistently, and it kind of seems to work almost all the time. People have not figured that out yet for whatever reason. Good delivery, good shots on him. Yeah, Bolter's, I think, like I said, we have said a couple of different podcasts already. I kind of was wondering how he was going to do transitioning, and he's blown me away and has looked very much at home so far.
100% agree. On the bench, you got Fairman, Greimel. Again, we got to see him. Salazar, Polter, Oyan on there. I guess he's recovered enough from his injury that he could be on the bench. Karaman, no relation. Aiden, Krul, and Latza. Go ahead.
Real quick too. Sorry, I know we're taking a lot of time talking about the lineup today, which is usually not what we spend as much time talking on. But let's talk about the Aiden thing because Pascal brings it up for a second.
Yeah.
So obviously you and I have been fans of him previously. We're never going to complain if we see him in the starting lineup for the most part. You would think potentially that this kind of game where suddenly Brunner is unavailable, that would be certainly the opportunity for Aiden to get the look. And he did make the bench this time as opposed to being with the U23s or wherever he's been, during match days where he's not with, the senior squad. So what do you make of Matriciani getting the start there? Do we think that because at times Aiden may have been kind of little brothered a little bit from a physical standpoint, that, when we're talking about a replacement right back, Kramer at this moment is hey, who's going to be more defensively solid for me and potentially not, give something away that's going to cause, give something away cheaply to Bochum, that kind of a thing. Is it a conservative move? Is it literally just that Matriciani has been performing better and training better, and he thinks that's the better option overall, regardless? Because I think you and I would both agree that Aiden provides quite a bit more than Matriciani going forward. Yeah. Once again, maybe with Tobias Moore, who we know is going to provide that anyway. He's let's get somebody, more defensively strong on the the right-hand side. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I tend to lean with you that it seems that he went for a conservative approach. I mean, obviously Hoffmann is a big guy. Simon Zoller is a decent guy, but he's someone who can muscle you off for sure. So maybe that was a question mark that they wanted to be, worried about the big bodies pushing off Aiden, who's historically struggling in that department. And they know that Aiden maybe does like to push up, and Bochum are capable of hitting you on the counterattack with guys like Holtmann and Zoller, especially. Maybe it's safer to play with Matriciani, who doesn't push up as much. He's more defensively sound and can help out with Vandenberg, who probably needed some help after the first game, struggled mightily, and maybe they thought Matriciani would be able to help him out a little bit. And maybe it has something to do with the practice as well. Maybe he does better. We're not there, right? We don't know. But I think from an optics standpoint, I think Aiden seems like the better person to put in there. In this game, I think despite whatever, we don't know what Kramer's intentions were with Matriciani, but it seemed that the majority of the focus for Bochum, especially in the first half, was down Matriciani's side, and they were quite successful, especially when Holtmann came in. They picked up an injury. One of their players, Asano or whoever, picked up an injury 2 minutes into the game. Holtmann comes in and was pretty much their best player for the most part.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because the only reason he was on the pitch as early as he was, I think inside 5 minutes potentially, was because of the injury. He wasn't in the starting lineup, and he actually very much made the most of that opportunity and was certainly one of the more dangerous players for them.
Yeah. So there's the starting lineup, and Asano on the left wing there. Obviously, Hoffmann, we talked about. Zoller, one of the really good goal scorer. Stoger was very good in this game.
Kevin Stoger, a name that I think a lot of fans will probably be familiar with on this lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, I agree with you about Çalhanoğlu. We are just as much a fans of him as Aydin, and it perplexes us. Gamboa had a decent game. Masovic had a decent game. Lampropoulos, Gesundheit, okay game, and Suarez had a decent game, and then Reimann was the one who was the weakest link for them, but decent lineup. Obviously, the three main guys for me were going to be Zoller, Hoffmann, and Stoger. I think the Asano injury, like you talked about, really added another dimension to them, and Holtmann was ultimately the most dangerous person on the pitch for them because he consistently went down the pitch. He kind of assisted on that goal or led to the goal, right? That they ended up scoring. But yeah, I mean, for Revierderby, I thought it was feisty for 45 minutes at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zoller has a couple goals already this season, so he's certainly one of the danger men. Actually, I mean, I thought the second half was a little bit more entertaining overall than the first, but I think I did like Schalke's approach off the bat. We seemed up for it. We seemed energetic. Particularly, let's talk about Kraus for a second. Why don't we?
Why not?
From minute one, he was, I thought, like all over the place, very much an engine trying to drive us forward and constantly keep the tempo up and trying to make things happen. We talk about that, that midfield pairing of Flick and Kraus in this game. It was often Kraus was the one who was advancing and kind of taking on that more marauding role going forward, which is something he's shown, some adeptness at early in the season with some of those transition moments that we've talked about as well. So, personally, I continue to be very impressed by Tom Kraus, just to say that off the bat as well. What is he, like 21?
Yeah,
something like that on loan from Leipzig. Really hope we can find a way to secure that guy. I don't know what Leipzig's planning on doing with him.
We need to stay in the Bundesliga first, and then we can secure him.
Well, for sure. But I'm saying early returns are like that's a nice loan signing for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I 100% agree. He's been also one of our most consistent players on the team this year. Outside of Bülter, he's probably the next best guy on the team, honestly, in terms of consistency, especially in that midfield. He's been the most consistent player in that midfield. Obviously, Flick has been there the whole time. We had Latza in there. Krall has been there. But I think Kraus has been the most consistent and always in the action, right? He sometimes plays the pivot positions, but he attacks as well, like McKennie used to do or Goretzka used to do. He's involved everywhere, and you love it. And he was rallying up the crowd, which you love. They love him, he loves them, and so it's a match made in heaven. Goal scoring started on the first half. Dominic Drexler, a guy we talked about who is at home in the Bundesliga, Bülter, right? So Drexler kind of started it off, gave it to Bülter on the left. He cuts in, takes a shot. You want him to do that. Rebound came to Reimann. Reimann did really poor in rebound, and Drexler heads up, puts a rebound away, 1-0. Heads up play by Drexler. He kind of started the play and finished the play, and Bülter doing what you kind of want him to do. At that point, up before he had got that shut off, we didn't have any attacking moments by anybody, really. It was a couple of things here and there, but Bülter finally attacked his guy one-on-one, which he can do, and it led to a goal.
Yeah, I mean, partially fortunate for Drexler to kind of be in the right spot at the right time, but he also kind of, arrived in that area because he vacated space in the box to create a lane for Bülter to try to drive into and shoot through. So, I mean, like, as you said, he started it off, got into the box, vacated some nice space for his teammate, and then ultimately was rewarded for doing.
I think you muted yourself. Can't hear you. No audio. You lost your audio there. Nothing yet. Live TV, folks. While you figured that out, I'm going to go ahead and, talk about the next one. 1-0 into halftime. I thought Drexler, one of the better players of the match. Again, he was nominated into the kicker best players of the week. Obviously doing really well. Is your audio working back, Jack? Nope, not yet. I was going to talk to here the whole time. I thought Drexler, was a good performer in the game. First half, obviously have that goal was huge. I thought we needed a goal at that point. And when you play a team like Bochum, a team that you're better than, you need to score a goal, because the longer, and I said this on the live stream, the longer you go scoreless, the more confidence that they get. And then the more dangerous that they become. Hi, Jack.
Hello.
Hey, you're back. You're back.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. You got excited. But I was saying, yeah, like we scored at the right time. We needed to score when we did, because if we hadn't, the longer you go into the game against a team that's below you, the more confidence to get and the best chance that they have to upset you or score a goal, whatever. And so I think Drexler's goal before halftime was very timely. We needed that goal going into halftime, 1-0. And up to the first half, it was pretty even, in my opinion. I don't know what your thoughts on the first half were, but obviously the goal helps immensely, and you got to feel good about yourself, at least being an even game as it is. You got the lead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we looked pretty solid overall. I would probably give us the edge in the first half as well. But yeah, definitely didn't take advantage of everything, and the Drexler goal was very important. I think we can talk about maybe Tirada improving a little bit later in the game when Poulter comes on, but I think Tirada was once again disappointing in this game.
Yeah.
There was an opportunity, I think, off a throw-in pretty early that kind of like fell to him, and he immediately just kind of hit it. I mean, I know he was just kind of taking a volley, but like if that's literally anywhere than other at the keeper, it's absolutely a goal. He couldn't place it on, hit the post later as well. I mentioned the through ball from Larson that it's still in a little bit of an angle for him to finish that from, but seemed to take like one touch too many and just completely lost the chance. He just seems to be a little bit off the pace, I think, overall so far. And I'm hoping I'm kind of overreacting to that and he kind of turns things around. We're all rooting for him, of course, but hasn't seemed to be sort of quite as automatic all the time as he was last year, where he was like almost constantly making the correct decisions. Reading the game very well. If he needs to lay it off to somebody, he's doing that. If he needs to be decisive and take a shot, he's doing that. Just seems a little bit more out of it, I think, so far, early returns this season.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually having this conversation with Brian from the Eintracht Frankfurt. I can't say that for whatever reason, from their podcast. And we're talking about Tirada, and he was saying, some guys just have this niche and they're really good at one thing. Tirada's good at this Zweite Liga, and I still hold up hope that he can figure this out with this club. The team got so close last year. Majority of the players are still there, the core, I guess. And so the hope is that he would find a way. And last week, the week before, I guess, the game before, he scored, and sort of like, okay, maybe that's a chance. And in the first half, he was really non-existent. A couple opportunities that he should have probably put away, and he didn't. As you mentioned, he did get better in the second half. Pascal, I agree with you 100% with the ESPN thing. He's so nice.
He's also not winning a lot of his aerial duels either, which, like, for a guy that you would expect who's that large and you would expect to just be the target man, like, he's not having the success that he had, I think, last season.
Was he successful last year?
I think he was more successful than he's been this season. I'd have to take a look at the stats again, but I feel like every time I'm looking at, like I said, his duel numbers and everything, he's not winning the percentage of them that you would expect from a guy who kind of plays that general role and has that profile.
So this is my biggest gripe with the team thus far, is that stupid long ball needs to stop from Schwolow. It has to stop.
We've been saying that since like week 2. Yeah, we've been saying that. Yeah,
they've been successful maybe once or twice this season. And I think one to Tirada, one to Poulter this season. It's not working. I mean, if you want to go long, go to midfield to one of the wings like Poulter or whoever's on the right wing. Stop going for that long ball. We're just turning it over, losing possession, and you're giving other opposition an opportunity to come down and score on you. It's like, stop it. Just don't kick it anymore. Just throw it, hand short passes or throws or whatever. Tired of it because we keep losing it. And Tirada's not winning, like you said. Poulter's not even winning. And it's just that maybe the accuracy is really bad by Schwolow. I don't know.
Yeah, Schwolow isn't particularly good at directing those. And I mean, listen, I can understand it can be difficult to build out of the back. Not every team's built from it. Kramer might not like to do that as just sort of a general course. He might not like the personnel he has. You would think that with somebody with like Yoshida in the back line, you would be able to have some sort of semblance of calm and composure in possession that can help you kind of build through it a little bit. But yeah, we're very wasteful. I mean, we'll have these, defensive moments where we recover the ball or whatever, and then it goes to Schwolow for like a goal kick, whatever the situation is, and we're just kind of giving possession back again immediately. I guess I would probably prefer to at least see maybe some of these be a little bit more like mid-range goal kicks out to a wing or something, as opposed to like, the pure hoofball direct one, route one football to like a striker kind of situation. So maybe there's some different things that we can try in terms of like, what's the distance, what part of the pitch are we trying to go to on these? I don't know. But then also like when you're playing those aerial balls and you're not going them all the way up the pitch, it's a lot easier for people to counter against you, if they win it back, like, if you're only going like mid-range or short range or some of these, I don't know. So it's difficult to parse, but I think the bottom line that we both agree on is that, it hasn't been particularly effective too far. And it's getting rid of some possession opportunities that we might otherwise have. And we're very much in the minority of possession in a lot of these games. We had less possession than Bochum did in this one too. And it's like,
yes,
fine, if that's the way you're setting up the team, but this is the bottom table team and you can't get the majority of possession against them. Like, all right, like,
They had
we won the
5
game,
losses
but
already.
possession isn't everything. But you know what I'm saying? It's just,
Yeah.
it's not. Some of these underlying statistics are a little bit worrying when we talk about playing teams like Dortmund or Bayern or whatever the situation is later in the season.
Yeah. Eric says that Franz was doing the same thing last year. Yeah, it was unsuccessul. Pascal says that the long balls are like our Hail Marys. We're reducing the amount of long balls. Bochum did much more in the last game. So maybe they need to start to work through the midfield and short passing more. Yeah, I don't want to compare Schwoloff or any goalkeeper in the Bundesliga to Ederson from Man City, right? But what he does so well is he does those long passes. He's very accurate, but he goes for the wing passes a lot around midfield. The short medium range passes, those are more successful than those long ones because they never work. They've never worked for us, and we just need to stop. We're giving away, meaningless possessions.
When it seemed like a couple years ago, back when we had like John Joe Kenny, we would connect on some of those ones that were more diagonally out to the wings, and that would actually work sometimes. And I just like to see some of that changed up.
Yep. No, I agree about that. Came out the second half, and obviously Bochum was already going to try to score goals. Holtmann, who we've been talking about, he was very successful in terms of coming down the wing, Matriciani's side in particular. They kind of left Matriciani on an island there, and Holtmann was taking advantage of him, I think, all game long. We're just luckily that Vandenberg had a much better game than the first game. Yoshida was doing his thing, and they were clearing it out when he got it in there. But in the 51st minute, he comes in, cuts it back to Hoffman, who kind of drops it back, and both center backs miss him. Gets an empty space, gets a shot off, and ends up hitting off of a couple guys, including Zoller, goes in. They originally thought no goal, but correct call was on the play. There was no offsides, and ended up being Hoffman's goal at the end of it. But again, created by Holtmann to down Matriciani's side, and I thought at least up to that point, we were struggling in that department.
Such a weird goal to concede off a throw-in.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that almost felt like it looked rehearsed. And I don't think it was, but that ball comes in and then immediately someone's making a run kind of off of Matriciani Vandenberg. And it's like a one-touch looped ball over the top to kind of catch us off guard. And then, it's actually a really nice cutback to the center of the box in the space, like you said, kind of through traffic. And they finish it off. Kind of came out of nowhere. I'm not even sure how bad the defending was on that. Like, I'd have to rewatch it again.
They were watching.
Were they? Okay, but it struck me as one of those plays where it wasn't like actually atrocious defending. It was just like this rapid fire move that they just kind of pulled off, and it seemed to kind of work. So maybe I'm not being critical enough on that particular play. But listen, well taken and an important goal from them early in the second half to kind of claw things back, particularly because the first half I don't think was overly dominant from us or anything. So they were in the game at that point, and then certainly once they equalized.
Yeah, Pascal saying the goal was a defensive breakdown. Our defense is kind of wobbly since Itakura left. And yeah, I agree about that. Even though Sepp was doing better this game, for sure, 100%. And just, 6 minutes later? No, it was much more than that. 20 minutes later, ended up being an own goal, a set piece. So before all this happened, we were kind of sluggish offensively. And then a couple substitutions were had. In particular, Sebastian Polter came on. So I'm going to come on first and say that I'm going to apologize to Kramer because I thought Polter and Terodde could not play together. And you saw the intent of Kramer that he knew they had to win. And so instead of taking Terodde off, which is natural, right? Terodde comes off, Polter comes on. He kept Terodde on and he put on Polter in there and it worked. To my surprise, Jack, it worked from the beginning. And Polter, I thought, was obviously he's got a little bit of vengeance he wants for Bochum. They kind of ended on very bad terms. You saw some of the celebrations he had in this one, throwing one of his own teammates on the ground. But he was very much into it. And so, taking out some of the guys that they did, who was the first guy that came off? I don't remember who was the first guy. Larson for Polter, I think it was. And you saw Drexler move over to the right, and it worked. And we started seeing a lot more.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't shocked by it just because I feel like we had seen some conversation midweek getting reported, things talking about potentially seeing them play together. Not that we were expecting to see that from the get-go necessarily, correct, but I think that is an option that you have to consider. I don't know if you're going to see a lot of Polter, and Terodde on the pitch at the same time, all three of them. But like we said, Polter at this point is kind of more of a winger and almost like a wide midfield player to some extent,
sure.
More so than he was last season, where he was definitely more of a partnership up top between him and Tirada. And I think, Bolter's kind of played himself into that role because he's been so effective at it. But yeah, Poulter, I thought this was definitely his best performance, not just because of what ultimately happens, in stoppage time or whatever, but he had more good moments, seemed to be involved in the game, pushing the tempo, those sorts of things. Had a kind of like a through ball cross at one point that I think Tirada stopped his run or had a hitch in his run. And if he had kept it, it would have wrapped around the defender and been like a back post tap in. And that was missed. Something like, Poulter had a lot of good moments in this one. We were talking last week about how we appreciate players not celebrating against their former teams. He certainly did a little bit this one. So
a little bit. Both goals.
Yeah, but hey, it is what it is. But yeah, nice to see him finally have kind of a cameo that he made an impact. Yeah, I think he's been struggling to kind of like get himself into games when he's come on so far, and I'm sure he's been frustrated, obviously, because he wants to be starting, and then when he has come on, he hasn't been able to fit in. This was a much better performance, and I'm sure he'll be pretty pleased with how that one went for him.
And it wasn't only Poulter; it was also Salazar came in as well, and they were both immediate impacts, I thought, in this one. And so. Yeah, they got the goal in the 73rd minute. So it ended up being, I think, because of Poulter, his work that led to the free kick or something like that. Maybe it was Tirada, led to a more free kick. And I remember saying this on the watch along. I said, "Oh, Flick's going over there like he's going to do something." And I said, maybe they can do a short pass to Moore. I'm just joking, nothing's going to happen. And it ended up happening. Moore, slides it over to Flick, who stops the ball, and Moore crosses it in and goes in. Own goal. Masovic scores a goal. It sucks for him, right? But it's a goal. It's a goal. I think at first when I watched it live, I thought the goal wouldn't have happened if Masovic didn't touch it. But I watched the replays, and there's one angle from the opposite side. Poulter would have been right there if Masovic didn't touch it. So
interesting.
It worked. And like you said, Poulter celebrated the goal like it was his goal because he picked the ball, kicked it up in the air, celebrating right in front of his old teammates. You love to see that if it's on your team, right? But 2-1 at that point. I felt comfortable at that point. How about you?
A little bit overall. Especially it doesn't matter who you're playing. When the gap is one goal, a single moment can completely change the game. So you always want to have that cushion if you can get it, particularly against teams you think you should be beating a little bit more.
We got a DeSanto comment.
I was trying not to address it. When people bring him up, I try to just keep talking and hope that you don't.
I see it all.
No DeSanto conversations on this podcast, please. Although the DeSanto, yeah. Anyway, what I will say is Tobias Moore in dead ball situations from the right side of the pitch with those in swingers on his left foot, quite good so far. Not just that, had an opportunity very early in the game, probably first 10 minutes, where I found Bolter, I think, like wide open in the center of the box on a free kick that like the ball just kind of went up in the air. He couldn't like direct it on target. There we go. There's Pascal making amends for the DeSanto comments by mentioning Katuchu in the chat. There we go. Now we're back. Yeah, Tobias Moore. We've talked about Obion in the past, and his delivery seems to have been a little bit more inconsistent of late, particularly on like corner kicks. But Tobias Moore, like very good. I feel like very consistent. Plays, strikes a good ball, like good delivery. So yeah, nice to see him get involved. And yeah, a funny little little pass to Flick, little setup. It's nice to see some training ground shenanigans there. So yeah, important goal.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm not saying Tobias Moore should replace Thomas Oyan in terms of on the pitch, but Moore's been probably more deadly from the set piece this season, and small sample compared to Thomas Oyan, to the points you bring. Every time Oyan's had an opportunity, it's been to the first man, hasn't got over or gone too far. It's never been really that cross, and everyone that Tobias Moore has had, most of them have been in deadly situations. So again, it's a small sample size. Talking about the lineup, we said that maybe Tirada and Poulter couldn't play together, but eventually at some point Tirada comes off, Karaman, another big guy, comes on, and they continued that form. And Moore,
and Grimo, by the way,
and Grimo came on.
We've been talking about that,
yeah, which is excellent to see. And he came on as a center midfield, right, for Flick, I think, or somebody like that. 96-minute game is going on and on and on. We knew that there's gonna be at least 5 minutes of stoppage time.
It was for Kraus, actually. Now that I think about it, I think it was for Kraus.
Maybe it was Kraus. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, set piece, end of the game. More long cross into the box, and Poulter scores it, celebrates it. Karaman involved in a lot of that, and a lot of what was going on at the end of the game there. You love to see Poulter celebrating like he did, but I think that the lineup, I can see how having two big guys working in the lineup, because you have Terodde and Poulter to start, whatever, and then bring on Karaman later on after. That could work. It could, maybe not. But also, what you could do is put Poulter maybe on the right, more on the left, with Thomas Oyan in the left back, and keep Drexler or Salazar in the middle, and that could work. Because we need wing help. Poulter is very flexible to play any either way. He's obviously better on the left than the right. Or maybe even put Drexler on the right and Salazar in the middle, whatever. But I don't know. If you can get all those guys on at the same time.
Yeah, we're trying to go Galaxy brain now just to find a way to shoehorn in more because we've liked his appearances. I mean, yeah, dude, a 4-4-2 with Oyan at left back, more at left mid, and then Poulter is like the left of the two striker pairings up top. Get all three of those guys on. Yeah, Poulter, I don't know. You could play the 4-2-3-1, have Poulter go centrally and more play that left wing role. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, but good options to have. And listen, and you have Çalhanoğlu as well, who you probably wouldn't be overly worried about, getting minutes in the Bundesliga. He was pretty decent last year for a while when we needed him to be at least solid when Oyan was hurt. And Çalhanoğlu rarely, had bad games that you thought were hurting us particularly. It's really always been that right side of the pitch recently where we've had, the deficiencies and more of the revolving door and lack of continuity. But yeah, I mean, so obviously the own goal that we talked about, and then the delivery at the end there, both of those were more, and had other moments outside of those two as well that were quite good, with his absolute wand of a left foot. I found the defending from Bochum to be kind of suspect on that final goal. Perhaps it's because they were already down a goal, and so it doesn't really matter if they concede another one. They're really just trying to get the ball up quickly as possible. But they had like 3 defenders in the box spread out, basically man marking individual people. So like we were able to play a lofted ball into a 1-on-1 with like no help, which I just found was strange. It was just a weird goal. I mean, like it just seemed like the kind of goal that should not have been scored as easily as it was. Ultimately, a very nice header from Poulter to be able to get in front of his man and because it was pretty far away, from the goal when he hit that. So it was nice, but like, just a strange, kind of cherry on top of the Sunday there.
And it was getting feisty up until that goal because obviously Poulter throwing one of his own guys down on the ground, and Poulter getting involved in everything. It was getting very hot and heavy out there, and then eventually the goal happened. I think that set piece kind of happened because of a play similar to that where guys are going after each other and whatever. But you like to see that. It's a mini Revierderby. It's going to happen, and obviously the big Revierderby is coming here on the horizon. But overall, good result of the game. Better second half than the first half, I thought. Obviously, shots 20-10. I didn't realize we had shot that much more than they did. Shots and targets were substantially in our favor. Possession, as you said, in their favor.
Passing is still very concerning.
Passing for both teams are horrid in this game. A lot of it had to do with Schwoloff and the long ball. Did not work. But all the other passes, they could not string 2-3 passes together all game long. Against Bochum, it's very concerning, like you said. Cannot.
Our pass completion's been weird and concerningly poor kind of all season so far. And there's Pascal in the chat mentioning it as well. Yeah, and some of the long balls could be contributing to that. Our penchant for that is obviously going to hurt your overall numbers, but you would hope that you would be able to buff those somewhat through just your general possession and everything, and we still are kind of on the low end of what you would expect to be seeing. So strange. But listen, I think it's a very important result against Bochum, like I said, for Kramer in particular. That goal from Poulter at the end helps the scoreline look a little bit better and a little bit more comprehensive as well, which doesn't hurt the narrative. And the way people are going to view things. I think if we had failed to get a result, whether that was a loss or a draw, particularly a loss, but even if it was a draw, I think you'd have some hard questions being asked. We were winless through our first 5. Then you have, a bottom feeder whose own coach is on the hot seat coming. You're playing at home. I think that would have been bad. So I'm glad, for the sake of us, hope. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in this Dortmund game, but that would have been a bad note to try to head into a derby on, as if you had just, failed in the other Revierderby, if you want to call it that, against a team that's significantly worse. So, important result for the morale.
Yeah. Good result. It's funny because I don't know where I was going to go with that. You were saying something, and then I had it in my head, and then it's gone.
I'm sorry. You were trying to bring up these these players of the match, potentially, whatever the situation is here, and I am now. Let's transition.
So Schalke put out, these are probably the 4 best performers of the game. We talked about the Flick-Kraus combination. I thought was very good. I agree with you. Obviously, Tobias Moore, 2 assists basically in this game, and Poulter with the third goal of the game, and he was instrumental. He influenced the game as soon as he came on. For me, it was always going to be Tom Kraus. He ended up getting the man of the match. I agree about that whole 100%. But not to take away from what Flick did. Sepp Vandenberg had a very good game. Thoughts on the midfield too of Kraus and Flick, the young guys?
Yeah, I mean, as we've said repeatedly, I think Kraus has impressed a lot of people so far. There's obviously that sort of backstory of him being a lifelong Schalke fan, despite growing up, around Leipzig, and being very excited for this opportunity to come on loan and play for the team. Obviously, when he's playing in front of the home crowd at the Veltins Arena, that's going to be even more on his mind. He's kind of the emotional leader at times and really pushing the tempo and bringing the crowd into it. But yeah, I really liked what I've seen from him overall. He's aggressive against the ball, closes people down, tries to make things happen. Good at providing support, I think, as well. Like when somebody else is defending a player and he collapses to try to create the numerical advantage and trap somebody. I think he's quite good at that. And like I said, I've shown an eye for some of those transition moments too. I think Kraus has been great. Our fandom of Flick is long established. Personally, I'm happier to be seeing Flick at the moment than like a Donny Latza, for example, getting that start in midfield. Not that we shouldn't see more of him potentially over the course of the season, but Flick some decent progressive passing numbers again in this game, but also interestingly, like I said, oftentimes being the deeper of the two, with Kraus kind of pushing forward. I really like that pairing. Once again, it's Bochum. I mean, we'll see how that pairing would look against potentially a more dangerous team, and in whether or not they would be able to screen for the back line as effectively as we would need them to. But I do think that once again, both those guys, they seem to be pretty active against the ball. They cover a lot of ground. They're kind of pests. They're physical. Flick is kind of like he's filled out a little bit. He's not as much of a twig as he potentially was when we first started seeing appearances from him. Definitely been hitting the weight room, working on his conditioning. I know. Yeah, I like it. I've been happy with it so far.
I agree. It's been a combination, I think, that needs to stay, at least for the next few games. See how they do in the big Revierderby. Be interesting to see how they do that. We need some pace for sure in that game. We'll get to that in a second. But Matriciani had a not poor. He was unimpressive, or just first 60 minutes, and he got stronger as the game went on. For sure. Vandenberg, I think, made up for all his mistakes last week. I think another week under, a full week under his belt now with Schalke, he played a lot better. He kind of shut down Hoffman for majority of the match, which is not easy to do. Won a lot of aerial duels, was reading a lot of passes very well. Him and Yoshida combined very well together. I was impressed with Vandenberg considering how poor he did in the first game. It's so shaky, and it's no fault to him. It was
correct.
A hard spot to be in.
Exactly. We said he did not play well in his debut, but we also said he had been at the club for a matter of days. It's a tough position, and we were entirely willing to kind of throw that performance out and start fresh here, which even then is, he's in a more difficult position than like Yoshida would have been with the time he spent at the club, or other people would have been. I do seem to recall there was at least one moment where I thought that he got kind of burned because he reacted to something later or read something poorly. I'd have to go back and find what that was, but overall, I do think that it was a much better performance from him.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can continue to grow. And I don't want to make too much of this all the time about there has to be an older center back mentoring a younger one, whether it's, somebody, helping Malik Chow in the past or whatever the situation is. But I do think it's useful if you're going to have, a 21-year-old loanee or something from Liverpool coming in, that you have somebody you're pairing with like Yoshida, who is as composed as he is. Maybe Yoshida doesn't have the legs to cover the ground as much, but Vandenberg's going to have that youthful energy and everything. It could, in theory, be a nice compliment to each other. I thought Vandenberg was better in passing as well in this game too. I'd have to look at somebody quickly making that up, but that was the impression I got, at least from watching. He was connecting a little bit more.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up pace, because it's going to be important for this next game that we have. Unfortunately for Dortmund, or maybe I guess it has to be unfortunate. You're playing Man City. They could potentially put 10 goals on you, right? They're facing Haaland again, who's been destroying the Premier League. But Derby is going to be difficult. It's gonna be difficult, especially if they lose a second game in a row, because they lost obviously this past weekend to Leipzig 3-0. They might be chomping the bit. Obviously, when you look at the derby, rules go out the window. Form doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's a derby. Anything can happen. We've seen it all. But the pace is something that worries me, because Dortmund are very fast. They're very fast. Yoshida is not. Matriciani is not. He got torched by Holtmann. That's why someone mentioned in the chat, and I don't remember who mentioned it.
Probably Pascal, yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned Aydin against Dortmund would probably be good on the right because he's got pace. He can keep up. Wouldn't have to worry about the physicality as much. Marco Reus has had a resurgence this season, compared to the past. So we have to play.
Which honestly, credit to Marco Reus. As much as we hate Dortmund, it's kind of hard to root against Marco Reus with the injury trouble he's had over the course of his career and everything. I think he's, it's always nice to see when he's. Richard's like, I don't care. My point is, I'm not entirely got the blinders on. I mean, like I haven't, there was a game recently where Royce scored and Reina assisted 1 and 2, and it was like, if Dortmund has to score 2 goals, it's probably the way I'd prefer them to do it is Gio Reyna and Royce doing stuff. So anyway, I mean, there's a lot of questions. I mean, I think it's. I understand the point that you're making about maybe the physicality isn't as important. It's about pace. Can you throw Aydin for his first appearance of the season into a starting role against Dortmund in the derby? I don't know if you can do that. That's tough. That's kind of unfair for him.
Would you do Mitristiani though?
No, but I think you. I mean, isn't Brunner going to be back? I don't think it's a long-term thing, right?
I rather Brunner, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to just at least the first time around give it to Brunner. I don't know. I would feel kind of bad. Maybe Aydin's chomping at the bit. That's just a tough position to be in. He's been playing with the U23s. You're gonna be like, oh hey, Revierderby, get in the starting lineup. That's a lot. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. I would imagine that you're going to see Zalazar starting in that game. You would think, and maybe they're going to keep him going off the bench. But I think this rotation thing, giving him some rest. But when it comes to a game that's that high profile, you need some of your best players on the pitch. You talked about that you didn't think Zalazar was as effective off the bench as he might have been. There's still so many things he does well, though. Like when we're talking about using his body cleverly, when he has a defender on him, he can draw fouls like Harit can to some extent. Yeah. He's very clever with his body positioning and going down and that kind of stuff. Like he's useful for ball progression, obviously, and getting us free kicks and I don't know. It's just hard to keep him off the pitch for that long.
Yeah. And I think the natural replacement would be for Larson because I think Drexler more than deserves his position. Bulter, same thing. I guess if you want to question anybody, it's got to be Terodde. But it's a derby. It's his first one. Maybe he's going to be amped up for this one. He had a quote today saying, I've watched this derby my whole life and now I get to play in it. So maybe he'll be amped up for this, right? Poulter, you'd imagine to be pumped up for this. So whether he starts or comes off the bench, whatever it is. And more, I think, will be important for us. Him and, Brunner, if he's back, hopefully, will be important. But Kraus and Flick will be tested. I think they're more than capable of handling the pressure. They seem to work very well together. They both have decent pace to them. It's gonna be interesting. I don't know what to expect with this, Jack. I mean, what are your early thoughts about this game coming up?
Well, I can only hope that Terodde plays sort of the Naldo role, which is the old kind of presumably over the hill guy coming in, just dominating and scoring a couple goals. Although to be fair, like the season that Naldo was doing that, he was one of the best center backs in the league. He was actually phenomenal that year. Wasn't like an aberration in terms of his performances. Yeah. Listen, I mean, I fully expect us to lose this game. Obviously, I'm going to hope that Dortmund have some sort of late collapse that we've seen them have a couple times where they've suddenly shipped a couple goals. Yep. Who knows what we can create. We certainly have, players on the team that can do some kind of like, dirty, weird things, kind of ride some challenges, create some things. I'm already loving before the games even happen. I'm loving what Bolter, his energy and his faces are going to be in the derby. Like you have to imagine that like Bolter's going to be like wildly up for it and just doing all kinds of BS
shenanigans.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm realistic about what the season is. Our goal is to stay up. I don't expect us to be able to hang with teams like Dortmund for the most part. That's why I was so surprised at how like decent and like, organized and composed the performance against Gladbach was, for example, which we once again have not really seen subsequently. So yeah, it could be ugly, but as you said, I mean, you can say like, Derby form goes out the window for Derby. To some extent, that's not true. To some extent it is though. And we've seen some wild things happen in recent seasons between these two teams. And even games where, we're starting, I don't know, Weston McKennie and Robbie Matondo, or sorry, what not
Hamza Mendel.
Yeah, Hamza Mendel. Yeah, sorry.
Striker.
Matondo would even made more sense. It was Hamza Mendel. We're starting a derby and like we didn't get blown out in that game. I mean, like, so who knows? I mean, I have no idea. But it'll be fun. My main thing is it's great to be back in the Bundesliga, and it's great to have the ability to play a Revierderby against Dortmund. It's one of the preeminent, in my opinion, fixtures. Not just in the Bundesliga, of course, but in all of, the European top 5 leagues. It's a great rivalry. Yeah. It's great for German football to have that back. And, hopefully the fans enjoy. We don't see too many shenanigans with the ultras that we saw sometimes late into, before we got relegated. There was some weird stuff happening.
Yeah. It's a lot of that with the Champions League and Europa League games as well, too, with German teams as well. Leverkusen was one of them. Cologne was another one. Yeah, I'm with Pascal. If we lose, it has to be in a fighting spirit. We need to make it a difficult and fun game for us, at least. And I'm at least content with a loss if we're fighting and it's 1-0, 2-1, or something like that. I think we can get a draw. I think for Kramer, if he finds a way to get a win somehow, his job is safe until Christmas. I mean, it has to be. And you win a derby, especially with everything, all the chips against you, you get a pass for a few months. Unless, of course, we go on a 10-game losing streak or something like that, right? But, yeah, I don't know. I think if we can play discipline, we cannot give Dortmund 70% possession of the ball. If it's Bayern, you expect that. Dortmund, we cannot do that. We just cannot. If they give them chance after chance to score goals, they're going to score, right? You can't let them have that many shots. So we need to do a lot better on the counterattacks. Bulter and some of these guys like Drexler, they're going to have to stir it up, get them pissed off, and make it worth a while. So I don't know what to expect, though.
I'm worried about Guerrero, honestly.
He's always a killer for us.
But especially down the left-hand side against what we talked about, happening on Larson and Petrosciani potentially. If that's who we,
that's why Brunner needs to
be
there.
Yeah, I don't know. I am concerned about that a little bit. Yeah, it's as Pascal said. We've already said it. I'm not expecting a lot from this game. Hopefully, it's a good performance, and at least we don't get played off the pitch entirely, even if we lose. Hopefully, it's entertaining for the fans to some extent. But yeah, nice to have the fixture back.
Yeah, game is in Dortmund. So yeah, we'll see. Big Revierderby. I don't know about there's gonna be a live stream just because I'm day to day, hour to hour, and Jack won't be doing it. And I don't know about the podcast. We'll see if I'm here for the podcast. But after the derby, there is a international break, I believe, right, Jack?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, and we got
correct us if we're wrong in the chat, but I think there's an international break immediately after.
Yeah, the next 3 games are interesting. We got Dortmund, Augsburg, and Leverkusen before we got Hoffenheim home and away with regular season and DFB Pokal. So, but all eyes are on Dortmund this week. Big Revierderby stuff. Look for watch parties all around the U.S. If you know anybody in the New York area, send me a message. Send us a DM on SchalkeMerica's Twitter. But yeah, big week ahead. I would love to be at a watch party in person. It's not going to happen for me. Maybe you, Jack, but not me.
Well, you know what happens when I go on the road to watch parties?
True.
It usually
doesn't
end well with us. Yeah. So if I go to Amsterdam Tavern or something else, we're going to lose 5-0. Well, if I go to Amsterdam Tavern this weekend, we'll lose 5-0 to Bayern, and we weren't even playing Bayern. We're playing Dortmund, but we'll lose 5-0 to Bayern anyway. That's what'll pop on the scoreline.
Yeah. Oh, big week. Hopefully the team steps up. They understand this is an important game. This is unique because not many of these guys were with us. Not any of these guys were with us the first time around. Only Fairman, right? Fairman, you look at the bench. I mean, Latson probably knows what it's like for a derby just because of the history of Schalke, but none of these guys have ever been a derby. Iden, maybe when he was a youth guy or younger guy. But for the most part,
the squad overhaul has been crazy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right.
So this is the first time for everybody. We need people to step up. They need to understand. And I know last year they understood the passion that is Schalke. They need to figure out this game. They have to step up, and it needs to be a close game, at least for our sake.
I don't think it's going to be difficult for them. I think, especially you talk about some of these players having maybe not been in this environment before, stepping up on a bigger stage. There's not going to be an atmosphere that they're probably going to have experienced all that often. It's going to be able to compare to what the atmosphere is going to be at this game. If you can't get up for that, I mean, I don't know what your issue is. I think you're in the wrong line of business. And especially when you talk about some of the guys and the mentality they have, whether it's a Drexler or a Bolter or whatever, they have the edge that you need.
Yeah.
To kind of withstand the storm and probably
Kraus too, I think. Kraus
potentially,
is in there.
Exactly. So you would hope that those guys would be able to, you can rally around those sorts of people in those more, adversity laden situations, whatever you're going to have in a cauldron, in a maelstrom like that. So,
who would be good to come off the bench in this kind of atmosphere is Krall. But it'd have to be, is a yellow card, red card waiting to happen, but you need that kind of energy late in a game.
Poor Krall. We've already set that narrative, like the walking yellow card after like 2 or 3 appearances, whatever he's had. And we've already written the script for him, man.
Uncle Bob. Yeah. So, all right. We've been talking about long enough. Victory Monday. First one. It had to be long, of course. So
absolutely.
deserved for us. So
we're on the board. We got a dub.
We got a dub. Chat, thank you again. Big game, big week. Excited. Jack, where can our followers find you on social media?
Followers can find me at JMMangan, JMMANGAN on Twitter. I'm like 6 for 6 this season, killing it.
My goodness.
Quick shout out. I've been enjoying some Ardbeg Ugadal during the podcast today, courtesy of my dear friend Noah Thacker and his lovely wife, Shauna, as a thank you for me officiating their wedding recently. So thank you to both of them for giving me some Victory Monday
beautiful
beverage to enjoy as well. But yeah, looking forward to the game this weekend, sir.
Beautiful. I'm ready for the weekend. This game this weekend too. We got lots going on in life, but my luck it'll happen on the Revierderby day. That's what it is, right? But anyway, you can find me at R_KHARMAN for Jack, for myself, for everyone. Big week, Revierderby. Let's get it. Glück auf.